Welcome to my channel. I'm really glad you joined me. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. This way you'll help promote these exclusive stories. Andrei Milya, Jesus of Chumovsky. The questions swarming in my head are driving me crazy. Appetite is lost, and sleep follows suit. You're starting to resemble the hero of a third-rate horror movie. The one who moved into a house haunted by poltergeists. A house where something terrible happened. A deranged mother drowned her baby, or a husband skinned his wife. And this something left an ephemeral imprint on the walls. But unlike the horror movie's protagonist, you don't see ghosts consumed by a thirst for revenge. You don't hear their saucepan overtures and creaking requiems. There are only myriad questions about the man whose house once stood on this land and whom all the residents of Chumov know. But the trouble is, almost all of them don't like to remember him, considering him one of the dark spots in the village's history. My head is spinning from endless why and why. Sometimes it seems as if the hum has escaped the confines of your skull, and now everyone who is near you can hear it. No, this is your burden alone, your illness, and finding a cure for it is your responsibility. And you know what it's called and where to find it. You open the door and enter the Drunken Bear bar, heading towards Mikhail Andreevich, the owner of the drinking establishment. He's a strange guy. With a stake in a well-known company, he moved to Chumovka, opened a not-so-profitable bar, and now works 8-hour shifts behind the bar. Apparently, he's making a nice profit from his shares, as pensioners always get a 50% discount on alcohol. They get a free beer on weekdays and 2 on weekends. So think about who he is: an altruist, a philanthropist, or a fool. No, don't think. And without this, questions are overflowing. You order a beer and say, "Uncle Mish, do you know the story about the Chumovsky Jesus?" "Who doesn't know?" he mutters in response, counting out his change. "But I won't tell you, don't even ask." "Why?" Because Grandpa Ignat tells it. It's his story, his glass of beer, and I don't need anyone else's." Then he smiles and adds, "There he is, sitting alone at the table in the corner. Go buy him a beer, and he will tell you about our Jesus. And for just one glass, not like some of the tongue twisters here. You glance at your change, it's only good for one beer." A minute later, you set the glass down in front of Grandpa Ignat and sit down across from him. "Grandpa, tell me about Chumovsky Jesus," he finishes for you, his lips twitching in an uncertain smile. "Yes. How did you find out?" "People only buy me beer when they want to hear that story. Plus, I heard you and Mishka talking. Or are you lumping me in with those deaf grouse?" He glances at the dozen other old men sitting at the bar. "I'm the youngest of them. They're 15 or 20 years older than me, even though they look the other way." He takes his first sip. "Did you know that nerves make you age faster? I was so nervous once that I almost ended up in the loony bin." He pauses, then looks at you searchingly. "You're Svetka Nekrasova's grandson, right?" "Yes, may the kingdom of heaven be hers." "Indeed. So that's why you want to know about it. I wonder who lived on that land before you. Don't be afraid. Your grandmother, or rather your grandfather, built the house where the summer kitchen used to stand. and that land was blessed more than once before they and Sveta moved to Chumovka. Of course, it was mean of us not to tell them, but, we wanted that place to be transformed as quickly as possible, the house built and all that. For what? To forget about Jesus and everything connected with him. He takes a second sip, then theatrically wipes his lips. So, listen carefully. I won't repeat it twice. You focus on his speech, and all extraneous sounds fade away. Grandpa Sasha no longer coughs. Mikhail Andreevich no longer bangs on the jammed cash register. And the glasses no longer clink after the toast to the years gone by. Alcoholism is a terrible thing. I recently read that there are far more drinkers in the city than in the countryside. That might be true, but in the countryside it's more noticeable. Cities have hundreds of thousands of people, let alone cities with millions of people. There, you could spend your whole life drinking and no one would miss you. But here, it's different. The population is 5,500. Try walking down the street, drunk and not running into a familiar face. I probably know every third Chumovite who lives near the bridge, and our little corner is beyond words. He pauses, makes a guilty face, and, as if apologizing, "Look, I'm old, and old people love to chat. So if I start to feel like I'm on the wrong track, you don't be shy, just speak up." I've had a loose tongue since childhood. I can chatter away at you here until Mishka kicks us out, and I won't even get close to our Jesus himself. It. He smiles. Well done. You've learned your lesson. So, Chumovsky Jesus, that's the nickname they gave. Vova Sudarev. Some say the devil got the better of him. Others attribute it to his squirrely ways, which later developed into schizophrenia. But I confess, I have no idea what drove him. Possession or brains rotted by alcohol, or maybe both. Vova was born into an ordinary family. His mother worked in the forestry, his father on a collective farm. And how happy Vitka, their eldest son, was to see his brother. Oh, how happy he was. You know where they lived? Pervomayskaya Street, number 9. There's not much to tell about his childhood. There wasn't much of interest there, not a whole lot. But I can say with certainty that he showed no signs of religious inclination back then. And what kind of religion is there in an atheistic country? He grew up a normal, healthy boy. Strong, hard-working. They say he was a good student. After school, he went to college. I don't remember which one, but something about agricultural springs to mind. But I do remember Vova returning 6 months later in disgrace. He was kicked out for drunkenness. In Chumovka, they kept a close eye on him, but there was freedom, vodka and students from the women's dorm. They say there was no sex in the USSR, that's a lie. They just didn't shout about it from every corner. People lived more modestly back then. Oh, so modestly. You know my niece, Lenka? She came over last summer. Why are you shaking your head, as if you didn't walk her home from the disco? No, Grandpa, you're confusing me with someone else. But you're telling the truth. I didn't see her off. Lenka's a real girl in a bad way. Who wouldn't see her off and then treat her with antibiotics? God bless you if I'm wrong. I'm not your judge anyway. And the expression on his face grows more and more sour. Just look at her when she put on makeup for the dances. And the dresses she wore. Disgusting. like a prostitute. God forgive me. Grandpa, you're getting carried away. Yeah, he nods. They definitely replaced Vova in town. The guy drank himself to death. He became an alcoholic. Now he was often seen drunk on the street. Old women were barking. The local newspaper wrote about him almost more often than about Brezhnev, and swearing in the Sudarev's house became completely routine. We were just kids then, 11 or 12 years old. We had an interest in hanging around under their windows and eavesdropping on their scandals. Vova didn't work. He was a real scoundrel. All he did was steal money from his parents and sneakily sip home-brewed moonshine, which he used to challenge his brother to strength tests. But Vitka was a tough guy. His muscles weren't poisoned by alcohol. At first, he tolerated his brother's antics. But when he started making moves on his parents, Vitka couldn't take it anymore. He took a club and taught his brother such a lesson that he couldn't get out of bed for a month. They said he even peed in blood. And you know what? Vitka finally got him through. He cured his craving for alcohol. For a year and a half, Vova didn't drink a drop, not a centimeter in. What was I talking about? He grins. Ah, so that's how it is. He didn't drink for a year and a half. He even held up well at Vitka's wedding. If he hadn't gone with his wife to Karish, maybe we wouldn't have known any Jesus of Chumos. But that's how it turned out. Vova stayed with his parents, and they didn't last long either. That winter, they both succumbed to their illnesses. His father fell through the ice while fishing and drowned, and his mother caught a bad case of the flu and burned herself to death in bed. After their death, Vova took up moonshine again. Oh, how many good people this plague has robbed of their wits, and how many more it has driven to the grave. It's not like he immediately became an alcoholic. No, he drank. Occasionally, he'd go on benders, but never for long. He never lost his head like before. He could have pulled himself out of it all until one time, during a drinking binge, he found himself with his drinking buddies at Alfenov's house. Grandfather Ilya from him himself. You know the story about Nina, right? She also lived on Pervomayskaya. I know. She also killed children. Yeah. She was a cannibal, the old man nods. They were actually drinking there. And then Ilya and Grishka went to get some sauerkraut from Ninka. The entire drinking party suddenly sobered up when Ilya burst into the house and told them about the monster in the cellar. Of course, this is more of a guess than a statement, but it was likely that day that Vova saw the world differently. He saw evil in all its glory. He and the other men had been retrieving the charred remains of children from the cellar. He didn't break his drinking binge for a month after that. He didn't show his face on the street. Rumors spread that he died, but unfortunately, nothing happened. Stories about Ninka quickly spread throughout the neighborhood, trickling into Karish, jumping from tongue to tongue. They reached Vitka. He rushed to his parents' house, and there, Vova was sitting at the table, sober, praying in front of a hand-painted icon. And take this delicious thing. Grandpa changes the subject so unceremoniously that you don't immediately understand what's going on. The hungry look with which he drills into the back of squid on the next table suggests it. Grandpa, what do you chew them with? Yeah, with my gums. I tear them into small pieces and everything's fine. They're tasty, but not for my pension. The old man is lying. His pension may be small, but his daughter married well in her time. So well that she's already bought 3 or 4 houses on both sides of Grandpa Ignat's family tree. She loves her father and helps him financially, so he has no reason to complain. Uncle Mish, can I have 100 grams of squid under the pencil until tomorrow? What? Did he just trick me into it? Huh, he's just stolen for time. He hasn't had anyone like him for a long time, so he's missing conversation and attention. A minute later, Grandfather Ignat puts his hand into the cellophane and continues. Vova was reborn. There was nothing left of the former alcoholic in him. Although, I admit, I've never been fond of religion since childhood. I was raised in an atheist family and lived in an atheist country, and his faith immediately struck me as fanatical. After Nina's house burned down, people started letting their children out. They thought they'd gotten rid of the monster. He falls silent. Wait, let Grandpa collect his thoughts. I'm younger than those old farts, sure, but sometimes my head gets so jumbled. Woo-hoo. Whatever they tell you now, children were baptized in the Soviet Union. Some secretly, some openly, but they were baptized, although not everyone. Thank God, I was spared this sacrament. In our neighborhood, we knew approximately which children were baptized and which were not. And so they started saying that Vova would sometimes approach an unbaptized person, pour some supposedly holy water from a jar on him, make the sign of the cross over him, and start reading prayers and babbling about original sin. I remember we were walking from the river when Vova ran up to us. There were 3 of us, me, Mishka Lopukhov, whose legs last spring were like a combine harvester, you know, and Maxim Savliev, who has 6 fingers. I remember we were even envious that he had more fingers, and he dreamed of learning to play the guitar and joining some Via Pesnieri. He used to say, when they see the chords I can play, they'll snatch me up. Dad, okay, I'm coming back. It's just that Mishka and Maxim were my best friends as a child. The 3 of us used to go fishing and Grandpa. Sorry, where was I? At the river? Well, we met Vova walking from the river. Everyone was already making jokes about him and calling him Chumovsky Jesus behind his back. I won't lie. The words he said to us have long since faded from my memory. I only remember that he doused us with water. The 3 of us were unbaptized. Maxim started yelling at him. People, especially the old ladies, came out to see what was going on. Someone said, "Move on, don't pay any attention to the idiot." And at that very moment, Vova slapped Maxim across the face. The slap instantly turned his cheek red. We were dumbfounded, and Vova started babbling something like, "The devil watches us with your eyes. With your tongue, he pours abusive words into our ears. With his hands." Before he could finish speaking, Maxim lunged at him in retaliation, fist slamming into his face. He struck him twice, and Vova, as promised, took the blow on his right cheek and offered his left. Damn, what a saint! Well, we dragged them away, and he started wailing again, saying that the devil had crept into us unbaptized people. Then Maxim's father appeared from somewhere and also hit Vova between the eyes, causing him to somersault and collapse under the picket fence. We were terrified. We thought he'd killed him. But everything turned out well. He was covered in blood, of course, but he remained alive and well. There were also times when, in houses where young women lived, he'd smear the fences with tar and shout that they were Babylonian harlots. For this, too, he'd often get punched in the face by their fathers. He falls silent. He is silent for a minute, collecting his thoughts, and then he says, "On Pervomayskaya Street, almost across from your house, there lived a woman back then, Zina. She had suffered from leprosy. They cured her, but her body remained disfigured. She returned from the leper colony, took her daughters from the orphanage, and began to live a quiet life. The woman was a good woman. She didn't shy away from any kind of work, but many of the Chumovites disdained her company. Zina toiled from early morning until late at night to feed and clothe her children. She wrapped herself in rags so as not to show off the scars left by her sore. They say she even kept her distance from her daughters. She'd bring them groceries, and they'd cook soup and fry potatoes themselves. I feel sorry for her. I feel sorry for the girls too. They were teased at school, called lepers. And in general, how did they treat her? It varied. Some tried to help, while others frightened their children with her. Some pointed fingers at the woman. Others shed tears when they met and tried to offer money. But Zina refused. She earned her living honestly, and she forbade her daughters from accepting handouts. And then I see people crowded near her house. It was the day after the Komarov twins were buried. They were little angels, almost the same age as Zina's daughter. They had gone off on a quiet boat to pick water lilies, probably foolishly playing around, and the boat capsized, and they didn't know how to swim. It's such a shame. Our mothers were friends. Mine used to say, "Look, Ignat, what a bunch of brides there are. Choose any one you like." And Dad would wink, both of them, and whichever one turns out prettier. Grandfather, sorry, nostalgia. So people had gathered near Zina's yard. They were chatting. Some were agreeing with something, some were disagreeing. I walked up and saw Vova, who had drawn a cross on the gate with chalk and started gossiping. He said Zina was a real witch. Her body had become like that from her dealings with the devil. The very name of her illness supposedly spoke for itself. God, they said, doesn't punish those who are not punished in vain. So it was for a reason that he had branded her, and there were quite a few there who barked along with him. The very same ones who disliked Zina and were disgusted by her. It all ended in a fight, and at night the house burned down, along with Zina and her daughters. The man, without thinking twice, went to Vova. They dragged him out of the house, dragged him to the burnt-out site, and started kicking him until he was half dead. I remember calling him a bitch's guts. They beat him and whined about how he'd burned a holy woman and ruined innocent children. All he did in response was moan and spit out his teeth. Only that same day, Semyon confessed to the arson. The police took him away, and no one ever heard from him again. The man who beat Vova to atone for their guilt wandered around Chumovka, collecting icons from under the table. Then they gave them to him and peacefully forgot about him until the following spring. At the end of March, construction began in Vova's yard. He did everything himself, asking no one for help. And by mid-May he had built something resembling a small church. Some old women even asked him to pray there, but he refused them all. Grandpa Ignat pops finely torn squid into his mouth and washes it down with beer. I remember stealing 2 cigarettes from my dad. Grandpa. That's relevant. So he stole it, and Mishka, Maxim, and I hid in the collective farm garden to smoke. This was already summer, in June. We were sitting there, smoking, and then a branch snapped off to the side. We got scared, turned around, and there stood Vova, staring at us with his nightingale eyes. Whoever starts smoking early will, by God's will, die quickly. I've remembered those words for the rest of my life. It's impossible to describe how scared I felt. But Maxim didn't chicken out. He stood up, broke off his stick, and strode toward Vova, saying, "Get out of here nicely and keep your mouth shut." He probably wanted to say something else, but didn't have time. When the distance between them had closed to a couple of meters, Vova swung. We didn't notice that all this time he had his hands hidden behind his back, and we had no idea that in each of them he was holding a piece of brick. It all happened in a flash. Boom! And Maxim fell on his back. His legs twitched as if electrified, and blood poured down his face. I was so scared I couldn't move. Mishka jumped to his feet and the second stone hit him in the forehead. Boom! He fell right on me and I lost consciousness. Grandpa is holding up well. His voice remains firm, his hands confidently tearing the squid. But look into his starry eyes, and you realize it's not true. He's hurt and afraid to recall those events. Many in his place would try to erase everything he went through from their memory, never to think about it again. But Grandpa Ignat is cut from a different cloth. He recounts this story to anyone willing, as if trying to remind everyone that the world is deceptive, that the more beautiful the flower, the sharper its thorns and the more deadly its poison, that a cute dog, whether vaccinated against rabies or not, can cripple a child, and that still waters are full of horned creatures. I woke up in the basement, he continues, looking away. The back of my head hurt terribly. Vova must have hit me on the head to keep me from waking up prematurely. The basement was pitch black. For a moment, I even imagined he'd gouged out my eyes. But the thought quickly vanished. It was replaced by the sound of approaching footsteps. That basement wasn't the kind your grandmother used to keep pickles in. No, that basement started under the little church and ended under his house. Or rather, the entrance was under the little church and the main part was under the house, and they were connected by a tunnel. However, besides that tunnel, there were 2 more false ones. I saw a light emerge from around the corner. Then Vova emerged from there, holding a candle, illuminating the surrounding area. It was terrible. My nose must have gotten used to the smell during my unconscious time there, so I didn't notice it when I came to. But my eyes quickly sent the necessary commands to my brain to vomit properly. I was tied to a wooden cross dug into the ground, with dead animals hanging around me. I remember a large black cat, 2 kittens, a puppy, mice strung on wire, a crow, a dozen sparrows, a duck, a snake wrapped in several knots, a jar of twigs covered in salt, and right in front of me hung a creature sewn together with twine. The body of a small dog, the head of a cat, and instead of front paws, human hands with 6 fingers. Grandfather Ignat closes his eyes and tears run down his cheeks, but he doesn't stop and continues his story. The son of a beach had apparently been watching us for more than 1 day and knew about the place in the collective farm garden where we went to smoke. He probably hid the axe there, the one he used to chop off Maxim's hands, and the shovel he used to bury him and Mishka. 6 come. I threw up again, so hard that I vomited all over the lower extremities of his creation, the pig's feet. Do you understand? He stitched together a man, a cat, a dog, and a pig. These are the devils crawling inside you, he began to tell me. Devils seek refuge in all living things, in people, dogs, mice. All these creatures were worm-eaten with sin, and I took pity on them. I, too, was weak, and demons lived within me. But one day an angel appeared in my sleep, and in the name of the Lord set me on the true path. He said that prayers are powerless against sins. Only pain inflicted on the flesh can cleanse the soul, and when I woke up, the first thing I did was castrate myself. Courage is a sin created by Satan to distance us from God. Then in the barn, I found a cat with kittens. She looked at me with her animal eyes, and I saw the devil in them. He talked at length about all the little animals hanging next to me, about how he cleansed each of them of sin. He insisted that not all holy scriptures are true, that many of them came from the pen of Satan, that even a bug has a soul, just a very small one. He began shouting, insisting that with every good deed he was getting closer to God. With every mouse he impaled on the wire, he felt his presence more and more strongly. Jesus Christ sacrificed himself. His suffering was edifying. He showed us how we should go to God, but they misunderstood him. And now I must help you. There was such a mess in his head that probably, first, his brain got rotten from the moonshine, and then schizophrenia took refuge in it. I remember he smiled so widely I thought his face would split, and said, "From the womb of a leper whore, only the devil's children can emerge into the light. And if fire can cleanse her soul, then only the torment of the cross can cleanse the harlot's children." I didn't understand those words until I caught his gaze and saw 2 crosses standing to either side and slightly behind me, with the remains of children crucified on them. They were already quite decomposed, but even if they had been recognizable, I still wouldn't have believed they were Zina's daughters. But, alas, he spoke again. I knew fire wouldn't be enough for them, and to save their souls, I had to steal them. But before the arson, Semyon planted the Komarovs in their place. Can you imagine? Vova somehow convinced Semyon to participate in a good act of purifying his soul, and he even took the blame. He dug up the bodies of the Komarov angels, burned them along with Zina, and condemned her daughters to crucifixion, and then he went to prison instead of Vova. Grandfather Ignat falls silent. The muscles under his grey stubble twitch, and he pushes his glass to the edge of the table. It's all evil. Beer or moonshine, it's all the same. It poisons your brain, nothing more. If it weren't for this filth, Vova would have finished his studies at school, found a woman, and gotten married. But instead, he ruined himself and others. He ruined some people's lives and deprived others of theirs entirely. Grandpa, you tell him, but uncertainty has crept into your voice. Oh, right. He told me about his mission, about these little animals, and left, promising to crucify me in the morning. And I never saw him again. How so? That's how it is. That same night, the man beat him up so badly that he finally reunited with his God. Oh, the idiot! I completely forgot. Back in the collective farm garden, he made a mistake. He buried Maxim and Mishka without bothering to check if they were really dead. He beat the soul out of Maxim, but not Mishka. He crawled out of the grave and wandered home unconscious. On the way, he ran into the Maximov parents and somehow managed to tell them about his friend's death. How could I not believe it when Mishka, covered in dirt and blood, stood there, swaying, his eyes rolling back in his head. Maxim's dad ran straight to Vova, and Aunt Zoe took Mishka to his house, and from there she headed to my parents. By the time Dad got to the church, Mishka's and Maxim's dads were already beating Vova up. They didn't know anything about me. They thought I was buried in the same hole with Maxim. I won't waste time on idle talk, but I'll just say it this way. They killed him there and set the little church on fire. When Mishka came to his senses a little, he told in more detail what happened and where it happened. They quickly found the hole, dug out Maxim, and then combed the entire garden looking for me. I was under the house this whole time, tied to the cross. I was amused in the darkness and started crying at every imaginary rustle, thinking it was Vova coming towards me with nails and a hammer. So I spent 3 days in the darkness, waiting to die. I was saved by chance. Grandfather Trifon, while digging around in the fire pit, stepped on the charred roof of the cellar and fell through. Luckily, he didn't break his neck or is crawling through the tunnels alone, but called the man for help. As I already said, besides the main tunnel, there were 2 false ones, in which another person met his death. You don't know them, but they were both good people. The false tunnels each had a covered pit with sharp stakes at the bottom. I still remember the screams of the men. They say it took them at least 5 minutes to die on those stakes. And I was saved. They carried me out into the street and handed me over to my father, who had just arrived. I also remember how people whispered as they looked at me, at a 15-year-old boy with gray hair. Noseless must have been standing next to me the entire day I spent in the basement, and from then on I began aging much faster than my peers, earning me disability benefits, an early retirement, and the premature right to be called grandfather instead of uncle, since I am not even 50 yet. You sit and finish your beer. The number of questions has diminished, but the buzz remains. You replay in your mind how you accidentally fell into a hole next to the bathhouse and found yourself in some kind of sanctuary. You remember the first time you saw the sinful wormhole pouring out of every creature of God that surrounded you. But now you know that you must save their souls, and the angel will tell you how to do it.